Welcome back to the Pursuit of Accuracy. I'm Josh. Today we're talking about the Element Nexus Gen 2 4-25 by 50. So let's get straight into it. I am not going to go over specs. I'm not going to read things off the manufacturer's website. What I'm going to tell you is that I have owned the scope for probably 3 to 4 months. I've used it on several rifles, from rimfire to centerfire, and it has been a really awesome scope for me. Now, personally, I think this scope fills an important role that doesn't get talked about a lot, and we're going to talk about it today. But first, let's get in exactly what this scope is and what you're going to get with it. So first things first, this is a 4-25 by 50, that's 50 millimeter objective, and this is a 30 millimeter tube. Now, when you look at a scope like this is a mil scope that has either a clean or dirty reticle. You can get it in MOA as well, but this one is mil. When you look at this, when you're looking at the zero stop and some of the features, this screams PRS scope, right? But there are quite a few things that come with it and quite a few notable features that are going to kind of muddy those waters a little bit. So the first is, because this is a 30 mil main tube, this is a lighter scope than you would traditionally see for a PRS style scope. This weighs in, when it's in this configuration, 31 ounces. So quite a big difference between it and its big brother, the Theos, or a more traditional PRS scope that would be 34 mil main tube and weigh considerably more than this. Now, of course, this is Japanese glass, has a bunch of great coatings, and a good quick administrative note as you're going to start seeing that scope camera footage come in is that I've been using the SideShot scope camera for several years, and it is GoPro based. Well, that GoPro has taken a turn for the worse, and it has become very, very picky about what it will film and what it won't film very well. And this scope and that scope camera, which is basically all but dead now, did not get along, and it was a real struggle to get clear scope camera footage out of this. And so what I want to tell you is that this glass is very, very clear, has very good coatings. It doesn't have chromatic aberration and all those kinds of things. It is very much on par with the price point of $2,000 for the scope. So you would expect quite a lot for $2,000, and the glass is not lacking. However, it may not be fully represented by the scope camera at all times, because that thing is more or less going in the trash after this. Besides the scope itself, you are going to get a sunshade, and one thing that I might have missed there is it does come with an attached throw lever, and you can take that out and put the included plug in it if you don't want a throw lever for whatever reason. You're going to get the neoprene cover. This could be very useful, especially if you're using this as a hunting scope, which we'll get into more in a little bit. We're getting a thread protector, and that is for the windage turret. We'll talk about that more in a little bit as well. And you are getting an aperture ring, which we will, as you guessed, talk about a little bit more here in a minute. So, and of course, beyond that, you're going to get a battery. You're going to get the common literature. It's going to explain the reticles and all that, which most of us are probably never going to look at. But first things first, let's talk about this windage. Now, it does come with a cap, so you can, use this as a cap windage if you're hunting. I would probably see a lot of good use in that. But now, me particularly, I like the exposed windage turret, so I would run this thread protector. Now, as far as parallax is concerned, you do have a 10 meter to infinity. The parallax and all the controls, the mag, everything is very, very smooth. Now, the turrets, they are extremely tactile, and as you would expect for the price point, they don't have any mush. I mean, they are really, really, really nice turrets, and both of these are going to be toolless. That's another great thing I like about the Element scopes, is that without tools, you simply just spin that off, and you can reset your turret wherever you need it to be, and spin this guy back on, and you are done in the field with absolutely no tools. So you take your hunting rifle out to the field, you zero it, your PRS rifle, you zero it, you simply zero out the turret, put this cap back on, and it is done. And you now have your zero stop. And while we're talking about the elevation turret, with this toolless zero, there is one downside to this. Now, it gives you a 0.5 mil under your zero, but then it is going to basically stop you just short of 2 revs. So this is 10 mil per revolution on this turret. So you're going to get about 19.5 mils of internal travel. And another cool feature that this has from the Theos is it has its own little rev indicator. So as you pass your first 10 mils, it has a little flipper that flips over and is going to show you that you are on rev 2. And then when you come back, it goes back to rev 1. That can be really handy if you're shooting in PRS matches or NRL and you happen to not zero your scope after that stage. Well, all you have to do is look and you will see which rev you're on, and you can quickly make adjustments from there. Now, one more feature it has taken from the Theos is this push button illumination. You simply start pushing it, it's going to activate the illumination. It illuminates the entire reticle, and then you press and hold and it will turn the illumination off. And this has been really good for me, both on the Theos and now this Nexus Gen 2. So before I talked about this being like a dual purpose, or what I'm going to call a crossover scope, and I think that this fits that category because this is a 30-31 ounce optic setup like this, and it has extremely good glass. It has a really nice reticle, has all the features you would want in a PRS scope, but it is going to be much lighter than a traditional PRS scope. So to me, I think the person who's going to really seriously consider this scope is someone who's looking for one good scope that's going to both shoot NRL, PRS matches, maybe not all the time, but every once in a while, and who also has a hunting rifle that they want really good glass for that's not going to be obnoxiously heavy, so when you're packing this thing around. So I think by now pretty much everybody understands the use of a sunshade, but if you don't, if you were shooting into the sun, or if you had sun right up here towards your shooting position, this is going to help keep that glare out of your optic. But there's one thing I get a lot of questions about, and that is an aperture ring. Now you're starting to see these more and more commonly. Element was probably the first company I know of that was kind of shipping these with optics. I think it started with the Theos. Now you have other companies offering them. And I get asked the question all the time, well, what in the heck does that do? And why would I want to limit the size of my objective and not allow as much light in? Well, if you're a camera guy, you probably already know, but if you're not, what this is doing is decreasing the size of the aperture of the objective. So we screw that on, and now our objective is actually considerably smaller, and this is reducing the aperture. Now when we do that, we have an inverse reaction of increasing focal length, right? So focus length is what you can consider that. And to help explain this, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, let's say that you're shooting at an array of targets from 50 yards to 200 yards, and we have the parallax or focus set to 100 yards. Well, objects from 70 yards to 130 yards in a regular setup without the aperture ring are probably going to look pretty clear. Now, as you get out there towards 150, 160 yards, things are out of focus, and as you come in closer to that 50 yards, things again are out of focus. So by using this aperture ring, we're increasing that focus distance, or that focal length, right? So we're still parallaxed or focused at 100 yards, but maybe now we're seeing things in focus out to 150 yards and as close as 50 yards. So we've increased that distance of targets that we see in focus. Now, why do you care about that, and why is that important? Well, for a lot of PRS and NRL shooters, you may find yourself shooting a stage where you're shooting troop line targets from 50 yards to 130 yards, right? With the use of an aperture ring, I'm probably going to put this at about 80 or 90 yards, and I'm never going to touch it. I'm going to shoot all of those targets and never have to mess with the parallax. Now, am I recommending everybody does that? No, but it is a key advantage that you can get away with an aperture ring. So it's not like a cheat code. It's not like 100% better, but it is overall better. So if that's something that you are looking to get out of your scope, then you should probably consider an aperture ring. So again, as far as the Nexus Gen 2 is concerned, they took a lot of really cool features off the Theos and they scaled everything down. And to me, I think they hit that unique mark of a really solid scope that's going to be equally as good as a hunting scope as it is a PRS scope, and with very few limitations. Again, The tool list, 0 on this, having 10 mils per rev, that's going to limit you traveling up to 19.5 mils. So ELR 22, probably not the scope unless you're going to run like some sort of adjustable base, but PRS, NRL 22, PRS centerfire, any of those games where you are going to use, kind of atypical yardages, then this is going to be more elevation travel than you'll likely use. And again, parallaxing all the way down to 10 meters. If you're running this on a squirrel gun, maybe this goes back and forth between your NRL 22 rig and your squirrel rifle when that's in season. If that squirrel is in a tree 15 yards away from you, you can parallax down close enough to make that shot. You can use this for air gun. So this opens the use of this scope up to quite a lot of things. And again, this is not an inexpensive scope at around $2,000, depending on when you're watching this, but I think this is truly one scope that you could have and use in a ton of different applications, and it's going to work very well. So as far as the Nexus Gen 2 is concerned, I don't think you can go wrong with this if you're looking to spend this kind of money and you want that kind of crossover compatibility scope, because we don't always want to take our huge PRS scopes and put them on a hunting rifle. That doesn't work that great when you start packing stuff around. But if you got to have one good scope that you can move around rifle to rifle, and be sure that the glass, that the turrets, and everything in this package won't disappoint, then I think this would be a great scope for you. And as always, guys, I appreciate you watching. We'll catch you on the next one.